So this is the diary of Antera Duke, an 18th century African slave trader. Okay. I know a lot of people continue to say, "Oh, you're reading the white man's history, the white man's history, the white man's history." But no, this is his diary. Okay. And I do know a lot about what happened on the continent of Africa because I believe, I would say 70% of what I know came from studying racially black people. Okay. For instance, right here are the old Calabar families who sold slaves to the Liverpool ship Dobson this year. Okay. For like 6 months. These are some of the Calabar families. These are some of the totals. Okay. These are some of the villages that they came from. Okay. Here are some of the peoples and places mentioned in Antera Duke's diary, grouped by trade region. This is his how he wrote in his diary. These are the dates, and like for instance, it was in Nigerian pidgin. A lot of it. Um, okay. So this right here, they were going to get the ship. The news the ship come up. So we run for the landing to get 5 great runs ready for furs. Same time we see. So you have to really look at it. And right here, he talks about 5 a.m. at Aqua Landing, a very foggy morning. I saw my Boostane yam canoe coming home with yams. Then I paid Captain Savage 1,000 yams for 100 copper rods. And at 12 o'clock at night, Captain Burroughs' tender went away with 430 slaves. And it goes on and on and on. Sometimes it would not be in the hundred. Sometimes it would be two or three, depending on what it was. This morning. Other times, like February 1785, about 6 a.m. in Aqua Landing with little fog morning. So we go on board Captain Loosum's tender and come back after 10 o'clock. Noon, we hear Loosum tender go away with 230 slaves. Antera Duke this was his business. Slave trading was his business. This was his business. He was a businessman. Okay. Um, yeah, so and slave traders worked in the business of capturing and selling the enslaved to the Europeans, and the Europeans would also sell slaves, capture them, and sell wherever they were. Okay. So this was a business, and it didn't matter what their religions were because they were not the same religions. Okay. It didn't matter. They were basically doing this for money, 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 and stuff. So as far as the ships and people were talking about where the slave ships were, the slave ships. Well, this is his diary, and he documents ships. He documents some of the families that were actually in Africa participating in the transatlantic slave trade or capturing slaves. Here's another one. He's listing the captains. Okay, so there weren't one. I mean, I know a lot of people think that there was just one ship or one big ship and carried like 80 million people. No, like no, it wasn't like that. It was multiple captains, and some would take a little, some would take hundreds. Okay. Let's see right here. Captain Fairweather go his way with 377 slaves. That was in 1787. So there were different ships. There were different ones, different captains. Even have footnotes. Captains purchased slaves by trust trade, advancing trading goods for slaves to be delivered at a later date. Here is an index of African names, and he just goes in his diary. Like, there's a family there. These are families. So yeah, a lot of information that seems to get lost will only be found if you go into the African part of the slave trade. That's where a lot of the information is. It's not just all with Europeans. Okay. So you'll get Europe here, but then if you want the other half of the story, you have to read a lot of African history from several different diaries and stuff that they have. Um, this is the only one. I think Tipu Tip also had a diary. In the same book, here are the European captains and slaving vessels referred to in Antera Duke's diary. Um, Antera Duke being the 18th century African slave trader. Okay, so here is the diary reference from the original text. Of course, you see Captain Savage a lot. Here are the captains. Well, actually, here are the notes from the diary. They just listed it on the table. The diary dates. Okay, and then you have the captain. See, these are more than one captain, more than one ship. Okay, more than one captain, more than one ship. It was not. It was not a bunch like 10,000 people on a ship. No. Okay, it was a bunch of ships. Okay, and then you have the vessel. And this is in tons. 211 ton. This is Liverpool Hero, Lion, Juba, Edwards. This is an African history. He wrote in his diary. These are the names of the ship because he was a businessman, so he kept tabs on it. Okay? This Nigerian man kept tabs on it. He knew the names of the ships, the captains, he knew them by name. These were his business associates, okay? The European and African slave traders, they worked together, okay? These are the names of the ships. He wrote down in his diary. This is the port. Principal owners of these ships. These were the principal owners of the ships. So like I said in the video, you have to link up the histories together to find out a more complete story. It's not just going to come from European, it's going to come from if you're just looking up slave traders and what happened during the slave trade, you have to go and try to find the slave traders that were actually doing business. Everybody wasn't trading slaves. You have to go and find the slave traders, the European ones and the African ones. And if you're doing the Arab, you do the Arab ones like Tipu Tip and all that. Okay, so a lot of these people had diaries. They had to write down stuff. Okay.